So, for people who don't know me, I'm a giant weeb. I'm so much of a weeb that I researched 3D for like 5 years just to get to this point. To a point where I can implement 3D anime into a game. Also, the people who know me know I freaking love Genshin Impact. Not just the gameplay, but also the fact that it's kinda limiting myself, you know? I wake up, turn on Genshin, do my daily routine, do my dailies, spend my resin useful, and I do 4 of these flowers each day. You know how this battle pass always has a stupid weekly where you have to like do 20 of those stupid flowers, right? But you don't actually want to waste your resin on them, right? Because they don't give much. Just so you know, you don't actually have to open them and waste your resin. They respawn each day, meaning you can have 4 x7, which are 28, so 28 a week. That should be doable, right? Don't waste your resin on them. And at the same time, a lot of enemies spawn which drop very useful items, meaning if you grind those flowers, those 4 flowers each day, you get a lot of items which you can use, and since you don't upgrade each day, those items stack up. Those flowers are highly underestimated. Overall, I have a playtime around 30 minutes at that point, so not much for a daily grind actually. And every now and then you have a nice update where you can have like some additional fun with. I know most people hate that they are limited because of the gacha mechanic, and trust me, I freaking hate gacha mechanic as well. But in this specific case, because I exactly know what would happen if I weren't limited, I would just play all freaking day. Currently there are so many Genshin videos floating around, like they all tell you the same thing or pretty useless information like how do you kill this boss, but then this game is so easy, who would ever need a boss guide for that, like what? But I can talk about something other people cannot talk about, which is the 3D aspect of things, the shading. So first of all, I'm going to share some observations. I made with you. Point number uno. We don't have shadows on the character. Now you might be asking, but what about this up here? All those dark parts. Those are not actually shadows. You can see if you take a close look, they don't move with the character. They stay on the mesh, always the same. Now I'm well aware there's one shadow that moves with the character. This is not actual shadow, but more on it later. Now you can see with the side of the character we're facing to the light, right? If I take a look in here, below the skirt, you can see the shadows don't fall on the upper leg. The skirt should block the light and we should see the shadow of the skirt on the body, which we don't. You can see we have partially shadows in there and some parts of it are actually lit while being below the skirt, which doesn't quite make sense. So those shadows are definitely painted on. We don't have real shadows here. Additional, we can see, especially on the hair, we can see it very well. We have an additional like step to it. We have the lit color, we have a semi-lit shadow color, and then we have the shadow color. We don't see it on the face, but we see it on the body as well. Now I want you to make a little observation here. I'm going to walk through the light into the shadow again. And I want you to take a closer look and realize yourself what is going on and what happens, okay? So I'm just going to walk here and watch what happens to the light. Did you see it? Let's do it one more time. So if you didn't realize, we don't have partially shadows. So if I'm standing here, you can see the arm should clearly be in the light. It should clearly be lit, but it's not. And if I'm just going a little step further, the whole character will be lit. Just like a switch, just boom, it's on, boom, it's off, right? So we don't have partially shadows here. This is also a fake thing. I'm going to explain it later. Now another thing here are contact shadows. We seem to have some sort of contact shadows. This one is really hard to notice. It's a screen space effect based on the camera and the depth of the scene. If you take a closer look, I'm going to zoom in here for you. We are having somewhat dynamic shadows, but like it's so unnoticeable, I'm not sure how much sense it actually makes, but it's there. If we take a closer look on the edge of the character, we can always see what people call a rim light. Now the more accurate terminology would be Fresnel. On the side here you can see, I'm going to zoom in again. If you take a look from this side, it's pretty strong. We can clearly see it on the hair here, on the edge of the hair. If you take a look from the other side, it's relatively soft. And this goes over the whole character. Take a look at the face. You can see how the face has some bright parts on the edge. If I go over here, you can see it's always following. We have a bright part on the edge of the face. And this goes for everything, like the whole body has that. It's just sometimes a bit hard to notice, sometimes it's a bit easier to notice. So for the hair reflections, we can see they don't move at all with the camera. Usually, right, the light comes from over here, it bounces off the surface and goes into our camera. So it's also depending on the camera. They should move with the camera and with the light. It's a mix of light and camera vector. So they don't move at all. But sometimes here in the back, especially we can see it, they sometimes fill a bit in or go a bit out or something. One additional thing I want to mention, wasn't sure if I should mention it at all, but one thing I wanted to mention is metal. Metal is a little bit special here. If we take a close look, we don't really see a rim light here, a Fresnel. Sometimes we don't. There's a bit of a mix in there. But the thing we actually see here, the reflection, is an inverted Fresnel basically. So instead of the usual Fresnel we have on the face and stuff, like the shiny edge, we have a shiny middle basically. So I made this here a while ago, never really finished it. I'm just going to take this here as an example project for now. Point numero uno. We don't have shadows on the character. I'm going to represent everything in black and white for now. So if I want shadows, I'm going to paint actual shadow on here. So that solves point one. They're just painted on. Now to the moving shadow, but for the moving shadow I have to explain something else first of all. For everyone who doesn't know, every object ever in 3D, every object is made out of single individual points, which are called vertices. So you have, let me demonstrate. So basically you have 1 point. 1 point is a vertex. You have 2 points, then you have 2 vertices and an edge. You have 3 points, 3 vertices, 2 edges, and now with 3 points you can close it up like that. You still have 3 points, 3 vertices, 3 edges, and you can close it up, which means you have a face. Now usually you don't have triangles, just a side note here, usually you want to always have 4 vertices, because then the face can deform better. And you can see, if I'm rotating my light, the plane, the surface here gets brighter or darker, depending on where the light falls, right? If the light falls straight down, it will obviously be very bright. If it like falls the other way around, the bottom would be brighter, right? That's just logical. Now, each of those points, each of these vertices has something that is called a normal. If I take one of those normals here, one vertice, and I take the normal it has, and I'm going to rotate the normal, you can see how it also gets darker. So the light on the surface gets created by how the light hits the normal actually, not the surface. There's nothing that actually hits the surface. It's always how the light is in relation to this line here. If those lines perfectly meet, like here, this one is pointing straight down, this one is pointing straight up, they perfectly meet, so it's bright. And as less as they are the same, it's going to get darker. Now in a little bit more complex case here, we can see the light hits perfectly this side here. It is the brightest where those lines, the light line and the normal line, hit the most. It has almost the same angle, so it's obviously the brightest here. And over here they point further away, so it's going to get darker up here. And just to emphasize that and show it a little bit better, I could just take those normals and rotate them quite a lot out, make them not hit anymore, and you can see it's going to get far darker because those normals don't point directly at the light anymore. This is just the basic of how the light works. If the light line is aligned with the normal line, it's brighter. As less it is, as darker it gets. So, like I explained, light is just asking, do those two lines align, right? But there's one more thing if you have a proper setup. Now, the additional thing is that is something in the way. For example, here. Here we don't clearly have shadow because like the hair is in the way, right? Those normals here clearly would still be lit. They point enough to the light to be lit, but this here is in the way, right? And so it casts shadow on it. Seems logical. But this is obviously very power consuming, having kind of real shadows, right? So what they did is they skipped this part and they only ask, do those lines meet? They skipped the part where they ask, is something in the way? And I kind of rebuilt this here for you. I wanted to take a look at the shadows here. Now I can swap this out here. So we have hard shadows, so I see it may be a little bit better. Right now we're asking, do normal look at light? And is something in the way? And I kind of rebuilt this light shading, but I skipped the asking, is something in the way? I'm just asking, do normal look in the direction of light? And if I now connect this, you can see clearly it doesn't cast a shadow on here anymore. It's not asking, is something in the way? Is something in the way? And here we skip it. And this is what Genshin does. They simply just ask, do normals look to light? They don't care if something is in the way. And those fake shadows, I just call them fake shadows for now, because they are. Those fake shadows are combined with our painted on shadows. Remember, we painted a little bit shadows here, and if we combine this, boom, you can see we have the painted on shadows as well as these fake shadows here. And I could just, in theory, if I wanted, paint on shadow wherever I want. Problem is though, if I now move the light, I'm rotating this a bit, you can see it's still asking, do the normals look in the direction? So this is kind of reacting like somewhat real light, but the painted on shadows obviously don't. So this is a downside of it. On the other hand, things can look very clean. If I compare it to the real shadows, you can see there's some janky stuff and whatever, but you would have completely true shadows. So this is a trade-off you have to make. So now to point number 2. Let me explain what it is. First of all, subsurface scattering. It is when you hold your finger on a flashlight and the light shines through your finger and the light scatters through your finger and you see it shining through. Subsurface scattering, light scatters the surface. That's how I remember it always. For example, I can show you this a little bit here. If the light hits the face here, on the edge it would, because the skin is so thin, right, it would shine through. So if I turn this on now, you will see how the edge gets red and it shines through, right? No subsurface scattering. Especially skin has this a lot. Most organic objects have that at all times, so if you do realistic skin, you definitely want to use subsurface scattering. So you can see what it basically is. On the edge of the light, you will have additional like reddish glow or something. And that is what they tried to fake in Genshin Impact, using an additional step to it. Now the face doesn't look very good with that shading, but you can see how much more of a realistic vibe it has. If I turn this off or on, it automatically gets like a way more realistic feeling to it. Now of course it doesn't make a lot of sense using real subsurface scattering for our enemy character. I just wanted to explain what it is. And the way they faked this is they asked the same question, do the normals look to the face? They basically reused this here, right? Our fake shadows. They just reused it and added an additional step to it. This here is basically what Genshin Impact has. Lit color, semi-lit shadow color and shadow color. And here we can see it's still mixed with our painted in shadows. Now obviously it looks horrible, but it's technically exactly the same. So for step number 3, I just janked this really quickly into Unreal because Blender doesn't allow me to trace lines. It doesn't have to function, not in this way at least. But the red line, really thin here, you can see it. It's representing the light and the light is shining through here and we have light on our model, right? So if we now move an object in between this traced line, okay, I didn't quite move it in. You can see the line is green here and then it collides, it hits, and we don't have any shadows on there. Even though the light in theory should be somewhere. You can see the shadows here. Not everything is in the shadow. So we should have some lights on there. And this is basically how Genshin Impact does it. Does this one single line hit something? The one single line that goes down from the light. If it doesn't hit anything, we have everywhere light, just like we normally do. And if something is in between, and this one traced line hits something, like here we can clearly see where it hits, here and here. If it hits, we don't have any light. Now to the contact shadows. For the contact shadows, I honestly don't think it makes a whole lot of difference in the game engine. Now Blender has really horrible shadows in general in Eevee, but we can turn on contact shadows here in Blender and make this look way better. In the game engine itself, I don't think it makes any difference at all, but just to show you what it is, turn this on and you can see we have now those proper shadows here. But if we take a close look, especially here, take a close look here when I'm going to turn the camera. This looks a bit weird, isn't it? It's like sometimes connected, doesn't like it would move or something. This is because it's a screen space effect, meaning it's not actually creating those shadows. No, it's taking the camera and feeling out, okay, how deep is that here and where's the shadow here, right? And then it's creating like fake shadows itself. Here, for example, look at that. This is weird, but just so you know, contact shadows. Okay, now next step, the Fresnel or the rim light. It's very similar to how we did the shading, right? We compare, does normal look to light, does normal not look to light, right? And that's how we create this back part here. And the Fresnel is very similar. So for the Fresnel, instead of asking, does normal look to light, we ask, does normal look to camera, to our current view. And if we take a look here, you can see that the edge will always be darker, because the edge of our camera is always looking further away. So It's maybe a bit easier to see on a ball. The middle point of the ball will always look into our eye, right? The normal here will always look into our perfect eye, because it's how a ball works. The middle point is always looking at us, and the furthest out point will always look like 90 degrees away. It's just how it is. If you look at a ball, the edge will always be exactly 90 degrees away from you. It's just, it cannot work any other way. If we ask, does normal look in our eye? It means that the middle point will always be white and the edge will always be dark. Here I can sharpen this a little bit out to emphasize that. The middle point will always be white because the middle point are normals that always look into our eye. Just, if I'm going to turn this off here, it doesn't matter from which direction I look. The middle of the ball will always be a normal looking at us. Up here, the middle will always look at us. Middle looks always at us. Middle looks always at us. And that means that the normal is the same as our camera vector. So I can show this a bit better if I create an actual camera. Again, what we're doing is we're asking if this normal, if any normal, align and hit perfectly with the camera vector. And where they hit more, it's going to be white. Here we can see the camera view perfectly hits with this middle point. And in a bit more complex scenario, it would look like that. The edge always looks white, because the edge always looks away from us. Now if we combine this with our previous shading, we get this white edge light, this white rim light. Now obviously I didn't put this stuff on the face, I could I guess. Now here for example we can see it on the face now everywhere. Now obviously this is not adjusted at all. So for the hair reflections, we basically paint them on. So I'm just going to like make an image and then paint it on here. Just like, I don't know, let's do something very janky here. Like I have no reference open whatsoever. Let's, excuse me here. I'm just like painting them on, okay? So like whatever. No effort at all. But they sometimes fill in and sometimes don't fill in, right? For that we have the Fresnel again. Remember, Fresnel is normal pointing at our camera. Is normal pointing at our camera. If it is, it's white. And if we now create a mask from those, you can see how they here on the edge fill in or fill out. Yeah, if I make this a bit more tight, you can see that a bit better. Fill it in or fill out. Now, I honestly don't like this method at all because they just don't properly move. Yeah, they just static and fill in and fill out. I don't like this. I'm going to show you a different thing later. Now, I didn't really plan to cover metal at all, but I'm going to like put it in here really quick. What metal is just the Fresnel all over again, and it's relatively tight. And just imagine the face being metal, and then you would have like the reflections. You can see how it would reflect, right? I didn't really want it to cover the metal at all, but like really quickly. Now if you use all those things, put it on a proper character and adjust them properly, you will get something pretty nice, I would say. For example, down here you can see under the skirt, you would normally see shadows, right? Because like the light falls in and the skirt blocks it all over again, like I explained earlier. Now I'm using a bit of a different method for my characters because I like those proper shadows, you know? It's a bit less power efficient, but not that much. Like it's not unreasonable to do that. Since Genshin Impact is also a mobile game, it's kind of reasonable for them to save those shadows, but I like them. And you can already see I have moving highlights, right? This is my way of doing things. Now they don't look perfect. I could probably adjust them a little bit better. Here on this character they clearly look far better. Now this is my way of doing hair reflection. And honestly, I think it's better than Genshin Impact's hair reflection, but whatever. Now there would still be far more to talk about. For example, how the outline is created and that the outline is in fact everywhere a different color depending on the base color. Here you can see I can easily change them if I wanted. Or how the outline size got adjusted. How the Fresnel size is everywhere different, how the Fresnel color is everywhere different. You can see I can change the Fresnel colors here if I wanted to. They are basically everywhere different. I just try to simplify it as much as I can, but it seems like the video still gets around 20 minutes long. But yeah, I think that basically covers all the character shading in Genshin Impact. So that was a little bit longer than I expected it to be, but I hope you learned something from that video. And if we want to learn how to create 3D anime, I have here 2 courses, and if you are a beginner, I recommend this one here. Even if you never touched a 3D program, you will be able to follow this one. And this one here is for more advanced people who already know some stuff. All you need is in both courses. One is just for beginners, the other one is for advanced people. Check them out in the link in the description. You will also find a discount code for both courses in the comments. I'm uploading this the Saturday after Black Friday, so you get a few bucks off for now. And in general, you can always get some bucks off on my Patreon, your decision. And also make sure to join my Discord so we can talk more about 3D anime. You can also leave a comment what I should talk next about. For example, I thought about talking about the different types of cell shading. There are a few. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video and I see you on the next one.